Today's January 29th, and it's another episode of the news.
I can't believe January's already gone. What happened?
Oh.
What happened?
This is your 2-week warning for
Not even
Valentine's Day.
Oh, Valentine's Day. Well,
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, for ladies and men in the audience.
There's a giant pile of screws off screen. You can't see. They've always been here.
Yeah, we put a lot of stuff off screen.
We gave up on the screws. No one ever solved the mystery. So I assume they never will.
It was such a
Are you not
simple
going to tell
joke.
him?
Such a
No.
simple joke.
You're
No,
just
we'll
going to let
never
him
reveal
suffer.
No.
Just like
I
the
don't
end of
think
the
anyone
last
did
episode of the
figure it
news. It's like, who was it? Who was there?
Oh.
I got about
No.
50 messages.
Speaking of... Oh, yeah, everyone was wondering who was outside the door.
We have a new intern, but that wasn't it.
Yeah, it was someone else. I won the bet last time whether the robot's mouth was its face or its nose.
Based on what?
Based on the comments in YouTube.
What the hell? Are you really going to take YouTube comments
Yeah.
as settling an argument?
Listen, I'll take whatever I can get.
we could killing a chicken and like laying out its organs is a better method of determining of answering a question than
We have a
YouTube.
related story about that, about strange butchering practices.
We do.
But not in this episode. This episode will be government and security, and we'll start with government. And as I always strive to do, we'll start with Ajit pie.
Sorry, Ajit, Comcast lowered cable investment despite net neutrality repeal. Now, this article, it was only $0.3 billion, but the really surprising thing here was that their investment was up in like random crap that has nothing to do with infrastructure.
Theme parks.
Yeah.
They invested. So this is CapEx, capital expenditure. It went up in the theme park category, but not in the rolling out cable and improving cable services
They've
category.
been playing Parkitect and they wanted to recreate that experience in real life.
Maybe. And it wasn't just Comcast. Most of the big cable companies dropped cable CapEx this year. So the promise, of course, and nobody believed it. Did anybody believe it? I don't think so.
This is what happens when a communication company has more money than they know what to do with. They invest in dumb stuff. See also Verizon and Yahoo, which we will talk about later.
But you also
Yahoo.
have to think about it's actually a money-making scheme for them in some ways because they have these data caps now.
Yeah.
And you can't argue that a data cap makes sense if you have brand new network that's more robust, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, they're never going to roll it out if they can help it.
Yeah.
Because it's a goose that lays the golden data cap.
Would you say that there is a business interest in them not upgrading their infrastructure? That it's got to be riding the razor's edge of the slowest possible network that the market is willing to accept?
Well, listen, I'm willing to say whatever you want as long as you pay me.
Yeah, but you're not in that position.
Yeah, I know.
Too bad. You ain't no fortunate son.
With an attitude like that, you'll soon be at the top of the FCC.
Yeah. The universe takes care of an idiot.
Yeah, it really does.
Well, speaking of the government stepping in for greedy giant corporations, Google, oddly enough, is asking for it.
Google asks the Supreme Court to rule on whether code can be copyrighted. This is a almost 10-year-old story now. This is the battle between Google and Oracle. It's almost like two juggernauts are just sort of locked in fisticuffs for the last 10 years. And Oracle owns Java, and Google implemented Java in Android, but they implemented their own version of Java. And so at issue here is the API. Can the API be copyrighted? Having reviewed that, I think that Oracle is behaving disingenuously here, and a lot of their ruling is sophistry. But that said, Google definitely is a huge enterprise that is using Java stuff, but I still think Oracle's the bad guy here. Not that Google's innocent.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of like, it's sort of in a weird gray area.
Yeah, well...
I mean, sort of, but...
An API is meant to be the thing that you
Reused,
interface to, so...
And I don't think they would have never complained if Android wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's a
sure.
massive worldwide phenomenon. So
The question that I have, that I was left with after all of this for the last 5 or 10 years, is would Oracle have complained if Google had used Oracle's Java as opposed to re-implementing it?
will they be paying a license though?
Yeah, then they wouldn't be
So,
complaining because
they'd
they're
be real
making money.
happy
Yeah.
about that. Well, Google, it remains to be seen if they'll have good news about that. But they've definitely got some bad news. Although in Google's world, this is just like maybe just a little bit of bad news coming out of France.
Yeah.
They've been fined $57 million by the French data privacy body under GDPR.
There's two different agencies. I can't remember. There's one that's like some French name, and then there's one that's all English. And I was like, oh, I thought that would be in French, but it wasn't.
No, the French don't want to pollute their language with these silly words.
Yeah, they have the academy in France.
This actually costs less than when the CEO molests somebody in the office.
Wow.
So this is like half of that. This is half of a molested intern.
They're going to start using that as an internal measure at Google. It's like, oh, that's only a 0.25 M problem. 0.25 M. Yeah.
It's not too bad.
Well, we know that the employees at Google are they're getting a little uppity. You know, they're complaining about Dragonfly.
Above their station.
They're complaining about the inter-office rapes.
The drones.
They got a lot to say about a lot of stuff. Oh, yeah, the
The military
programs.
drone, yeah.
So Google, what are they doing? Are they changing things internally? Not exactly.
Google urged the U.S. to limit protection for activist workers. While Google publicly supported employees who protested company policies, it quietly asked the government to narrow the right to organize over work email.
It was literally 3 weeks after they did the lockout.
Yeah.
Like, they were just like, let's not let that happen again.
Although, it does show sort of the naivete of the young Google employees.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, we need to do something about this. Let me use my Gmail account.
maybe go to Hotmail. CompuServe.
Yeah. You definitely get the
AOL.
impression that they're drinking the Kool-Aid and they're just starting to taste the piss that's in it. And they're like, wait a minute.
This doesn't taste like raspberry.
I hear Yahoo's desperate for users. Maybe get some free email over there.
Well, they're not desperate for employees. Foreshadowing. Well, we talked about Yelp a lot, and Yelp is this weird thing where, you know, business, and actually, so we've worked in the web industry, and people will call you up and they'll be like, we got to do something about this Yelp review.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's tough to explain to them. It's like, you know, you can't just
Get rid of
turn
it.
that off. And they're like, no, you don't understand. This is really hurting business. You need to go just deal with this.
It's like, I can't just deal with it. Like,
Some people,
You can write Yelp a review, a check.
you can
and-
tell them it's not legit, but that doesn't mean it won't
well,
get
some
taken
people
down.
have complained, but unfortunately, it will not be heard.
The Supreme Court will not hear a lawsuit over defamatory Yelp reviews. So yeah, Yelp has the right to manipulate their search results. So yeah, Supreme Court. Woo.
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, it's public, but Yelp? You trust Yelp. The public trusts Yelp for no reason other than Yelp says they should be trusted.
Don't you have to pay for it in some capacity as well? I seem to
Well, they
recall
have
that.
like a promoted plan, and the accusation is they'll actually contact you, and they'll be like, "Be ashamed if somebody saw these bad reviews." You know,
Yeah,
so
that's
it
right.
amounts to extortion in some people's eyes. But the Supreme Court says we're not interested.
We don't care. Yeah.
So, Huawei, of course, has been in the news for a solid 2 months at this point. The Trump administration is suspicious of them. They say they've done nothing wrong. China's kind of known for spying. So, where does it all lead? I don't know. But there's an interesting rebuttal from the U.S. government.
The U.S. believes it does not need to show proof that Huawei is a spy threat.
You should note that proof is in quotation marks in this title.
It's Wall Street Journal.
Proof.
So yeah, I mean things are getting kind of dicey in Canada. Canada has, I think, the Canadian ambassador, asked the U.S. to withdraw their request for extradition, and it would be good if they did that. But there's a lot of stuff happening behind closed doors here, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah. And so what this story is about is Huawei's just saying, hey, if you're so confident that there's some kind of backdoor or something like that, why don't you prove it? And I don't think they can, because if they could, I think they would.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I mean, every time in the past that the Chinese have been suspected of something like this, there's been a grain of truth, a nugget within there. So,
Except for that whole Bloomberg Supermicro thing, which was
yeah.
probably just a corporate hit piece to try to
Well,
lower Supermicro's stock while they were down.
yeah, I think that was more like, you know, the Chinese were just a convenient scapegoat there.
Yeah.
To really go after Supermicro.
Supermicro is an amazing company. I really think that we're going to find out that was some piece of like business espionage or like some kind of a thing to undermine Supermicro in the end. Like it was all just business.
Is that so, Chairman? Well, the Gatwick Airport had some drones, and then we found out, what was the other airport? Was it Heathrow?
Newark.
Newark. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Newark had Newark.
Newark. What?
I don't
Oh, no, there
actually
was one
know.
last week. It's not this one.
Oh, Heathrow? That was the other
I
one.
don't think it was.
London
Anyway,
Heathrow.
there was another airport. I think it might
There's
have
been a
US.
lot. We've had one every week for the last
But
2 weeks.
now we have yet another drone sighting.
This one has an amazing video. So this
I
was
didn't see the
Newark.
video.
The Newark pilot said that the drone was probably 20, 30 feet from the wing. And in the video, it does look really close.
So when I read this story, I read it on mobile. I didn't see a video.
There's a video.
Is there? I didn't see the video because
didn't watch the video.
the chairman of like the guy who does like the DJI stuff was like, oh, like there's a very slim chance, even if it was there, that the pilot would have even seen it. But I didn't know there was a video.
What does it have lights on it, or is it just?
Yeah, it's just a little blinky thing.
Yeah,
The video that was there was like, it was like Nightline City, whatever, and then like off
You could
the
clearly
wing.
see it.
Well, not clearly, no, but there was a light blinking there, and it's like, that is really close to the wing.
But if you're a pilot, you're going to be hyper aware of blinking lights.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's how things are signaled to, like, hey, don't fly into this power line. So, and what would the pilot have to gain from lying about that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be funny when it turns out that some of these drones are actually military drones that aren't even supposed to be picked up on radar.
Yeah. The manual or the mandatory registration thing went into effect the day the story broke, I think.
Yeah.
So when you buy a new drone, I think now you have to fill out the paperwork, and it has to, like they know where all of these serial numbers belong at any given time. So if you're going to sell a drone, be careful, because it'd be like selling a gun.
Go to the pawn shop, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, let me get your registration here.
Yeah, make sure that there's a record of that, because you might run into trouble, similar to how this young man ran into trouble.
3 charged in swatting cases connected to man charged in the death of the Kansas man. So this is God, what a terrible headline.
Look
It's
at
a
this.
terrible
It
headline.
is.
This guy is just like, that face is so hateable.
He's going to
He's got
prison
some contempt there, doesn't
for,
he?
what was it, like 10 to 20 years?
20 to 25.
20 to 25. There was the swatting death that we reported on in Kansas a while ago. Well, it turns out a bunch of other people had hired him in the past, and so they're just going through his emails, catching up with everybody that's ever hired him.
Wow.
Twitter. He did it all on Twitter,
So
which is kind of dumb. But yeah, there were like young kids would just contact him and be like, hey, I don't want to go to school today. Can you call in a bomb threat? And he'd be like, here's my PayPal.
Wow. What a winner.
It's going to cost him.
it's scary, though. I mean, he's cooperating, and he's like, yeah, I'll go to jail for 20 to 25. It's fine. So
Well,
that's-
the plea deal, because can you imagine
Yeah.
if he went to trial, what jury would ever let him walk? There might be like I don't think the death penalty was on the case, because it wasn't first degree, right? But that could have been life,
Yeah.
I think. Well, we talk a lot about biometrics, and as we go forward, we had the big story last week that your face and your fingerprint on a phone cannot be coerced from you by law enforcement, which is nice. But
that hasn't been ruled enough consistently yet that
Yeah.
I'm gonna be
well,
like,
plus I have no confidence that the cop knows
Yeah.
that, so they're just going to do it. And I guess maybe you could get the evidence thrown out. Actually, that might be better for you overall, but you're going to go to jail in the meantime. Anyway, biometrics is a hotly contested topic, to say the least. And the latest entry into this argument is Six Flags. Do you think this is where Comcast invested some of their money?
oh yeah, probably
Probably,
theme parks.
Yeah.
Illinois Supreme Court rules against Six Flags in a lawsuit over fingerprint scans. Here's why Facebook and Google care. Now, Illinois has some actually pretty strict laws to do with personal privacy, data protection, and all this kind of stuff. And they say, well, it doesn't matter that you're using the fingerprint for commercial purposes or whatever. You just, this is not okay to do this.
You have to, I think it's written consent.
Yeah.
And they have to be very much forewarned exactly what you're going to use it for and everything you're going to use it for.
Well, this was a case of a minor as well. Like, it was just a kid going into the park. The mom
Yeah.
suing on his behalf.
16 years old. But I don't think it matters that you're a minor. Anybody could have done this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The woman just had the good idea to do it. So those people probably are just chasing money. But I don't know. You think Six Flags even tried to settle?
Probably not.
Because they might have said no.
Yeah. It's like, well, if you don't want to do this, don't go to the park. How hard is that?
It does. I mean, there is, but you got to think Six Flags is definitely going to sell that, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? I think it's good, but this is definitely, it's going to go into one of these like end user license agreement things where as you go into the park, they're going to hand you like an iPad with 50 pages of text, and you're going to scroll to the bottom, and you're going to use your
It's
thumb.
90 degrees and you want to get to the water park. You don't really
Exactly.
care.
Well, in Europe, they have the right to be forgotten, which includes search engines. Literally, you have the right to erase embarrassing things from your past, but is this maybe a step too far?
The Guardian has this article about a Dutch surgeon who has won the landmark right to be forgotten case. So basically, there was a site that cataloged when a doctor was under investigation for something or their license was suspended or whatever, and this guy got in trouble for something. And
Post-operative care.
yeah,
They weren't specific.
and that persisted even after he got his medical license or his right to practice back, or the case was reviewed
They
or whatever.
appealed it. Yeah.
Resolved, yeah.
So the appeal gave him like probationary status, but when you Google him, he still showed up as cannot practice.
Yeah.
Was the situation.
So what you're saying is we can't have a Yelp for doctors.
Well, in fact, we cannot report a valid history of what happened.
Because of the right to be forgotten.
Exactly. So this is literally the memory hole. You're not allowed to say. And they talked about how there were probably 30, 40 other cases on that website that were in the same situation. So now they could all sue, and probably will. And doctors are certainly a part of the population that can afford to sue you.
Yeah.
So
I like to imagine that somewhere there's like a doctor house that's like super amazing, but just the most terrible person ever. And it's like, damn it, I don't want to give him a good review because he's such a horrible person, but he did make me better.
But post-operative care, I would love to know what exactly it was.
Was that just like he missed a follow-up question and the person didn't think to ask, or was it like, I'll remove those stitches next week? Like, you know?
I'm thinking
Yeah.
of like a Dr. House type situation.
Or, like, we didn't wake him up. We left him sleeping, and he was almost starved to death when we remembered.
We were eating lunch and it was like, what were we supposed to do? Oh, right.
There's a guy. Whoops.
I don't know, but I think maybe it's one argument to say you force those websites to update more regularly.
Yeah.
But to just get rid of that altogether, because now if you Google him, all of that must be scrubbed.
Well, there has to be a record of it somewhere, right? Even if it's not online.
Only with this appeal board, the public is not allowed to document it online because he has the right to be forgotten.
I don't like that.
Or it should be all or nothing. He should no longer be able to advertise his services anywhere on Google.
Yeah.
That's
one or the other, yeah, that's a
that'd be
good
one way to
idea.
go back. Well, here's something that I'm shocked that anybody even noticed.
Microsoft's Bing is back online in China after apparent blockage. So Microsoft said its Bing search engine was back online in China after being inaccessible for parts of the week. It appeared to have been blocked by government censors. Now, I don't like how tight-lipped Microsoft has been about this, because they said something to the effect of like, oh yeah, sometimes there are Chinese compliance issues and whatever, but listen, we value individuals' privacy and we will always fight for the individual. And it's like, what are you even talking about?
Well, you get the impression that the only reason it was blocked is because China didn't call them first. If China would have just been like, hey, block this, Bing would have been like, yep, yes, sir.
But that's the impression that you get. But in what Microsoft actually said, they're like, we're champions for the rights of the individual user. And
Well,
it's
of
like,
course.
how is that applicable?
I mean, why would anybody believe anything Microsoft says?
When this first broke, China was like, oh, we didn't mean to do that. But
Did they?
That's what I read earlier. With because people were freaking out on Twitter about it. And then I read an
You're
article.
not allowed to use Twitter in China.
Someone found out and it broke. I saw it in the sidebar, trending stories.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper down that darkness rabbit hole of things happening in China with technology.
yeah.
Yeah,
This is
let's
scary.
say that you were to use Bing in China and you were to search for something that you're not allowed to. It could hurt your social credit score. And you might be thinking, you know what, I don't even care. I don't want to ride the trains or the airplanes or go to college or get a loan or rent a house. But how about just walking down the street?
This Chinese app tells you if you're within 500 meters of someone in debt. This app is part of China's vision for a social credit system by 2020.
And if you're sitting here thinking, why would I care if someone next to me on the train is in debt? It's supposed to be used as a whistleblowing service.
Yeah, they encourage you to turn them in. Not necessarily that they're in debt. They already know they're in debt. But they're saying if you observe this person doing something that costs a lot of money, like if you see them walking into like a really high-end store, but they're on the app, the in debt app, you can turn them in for having the means to pay their debts and choosing not to.
What's crazy about that is it's like, what if you have a rich friend and you're meeting them somewhere?
Why would a
Well,
rich...
you can explain that to the police. I'm sure
Yeah.
and clear it up immediately.
Oh,
You know
Sure,
what?
yeah.
And then the police will talk to your rich friend. It's like, why are you associating with poor people?
Yeah.
What's
We've
your
been
problem?
friends ever since we were kids. And it's like,
No.
no.
That person, you cannot associate with them. Well, we talk about GDPR and people champion that and say that it's a good thing. But I wonder if the Russia-phobic U.S. will feel the same way about this.
And Ars Technica brings us the article about Russia trying to force Facebook and Twitter to relocate servers to Russia. Companies allegedly did not follow a law in Russia requiring user data to be stored in Russia. So on the surface, this looks entirely reasonable. It's like, hey, we've got a lot of citizens that use your service, store your stuff in our country so that it's protected under our country's laws and blah, blah, blah. But this is one of those things where it's like Putin is laughing under his breath the entire time.
Yeah. Well, you got to think that much like China, and to be honest, the U.S. and everywhere else,
Yeah.
they want the servers there so that they can monitor them.
Yeah. I mean, China's been doing that for years. Like the whole Bing thing. It's like, oh, yeah, you must follow the rules if you want access to the network in China. Sounds good.
And let's not forget that in the U.S. they were recording all the phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, something to remember. Now, I like
and
it.
email headers and, about 7 other things.
It's nice to see
did it first.
the scope of the audience when we talk about some obscure little country like in Africa or Estonia. The Estonian people love to comment on because
They were very upset with you that week.
But here's one that I don't know if we're going to get anybody, but I would be super excited if we do.
Are you from Tonga? Sorry about your internet. The undersea cable that goes to your country has been damaged and has wiped out most internet access in the Tonga Islands. So if you do have internet access and it hasn't been repaired, that's coming from satellite, so your ping time is awful. But yeah, the undersea cable was damaged and they got knocked off the internet because apparently they don't have more than one undersea cable connecting the country, which is bad.
No, they have the communication ministry or whatever. That's where the dish is.
Yeah,
that's
and
where
like people are going there to get internet
So,
access, according to
Wendell-
this article.
20 minutes at a time, and you stand in line for hours. Would you just get right back in the end of the line?
Yeah.
They're actually considering blocking social media because they said that was like 80% of the traffic.
Yeah, people just want to check their Facebook, and they will stand in line for hours.
See, I think I would just not have the internet for like a week while they repair it. They think a boat anchor or something dragged across it. It was broken in like 2 places.
It would be tough, but yeah, I think you could get through. Now, the thing that sucks about it though nowadays is I've kind of abandoned hoarding media
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
large degree, and I'm streaming music and I'm streaming movies. So when the internet goes out, you really just got to read a book.
Yeah. I think that
You
if
don't
I
have
live...
any DVDs?
No,
Oh,
I don't have a DVD player.
I still have a bunch of DVDs.
I think if I lived there, I would preemptively go back to hoarding things as a...
Yeah.
Safeguard.
Well, after this, right?
Well, no, even before this, it's like, our internet's too flaky. I'm going to do this.
Well, you might not know it as a Tongan citizen. You don't see the darkness of your beautiful. Is that like a? Is that a?
It's connected to another island nation, but I can't remember.
What is
which
it
one.
like? Equator type of deal.
It's in the South Pacific, I think.
Okay. Well, this is some more good news out of Russia that has to do with hoarding media.
More just law, it really. Torrent Freak says that YouTube Ripper has won dismissal of record label's U.S. piracy lawsuit. So this is a YouTube ripping site, flvto.biz and 2conv.com. They're hosted in Russia, and they will rip media from like YouTube and other places.
Like an MP3 for you if you're listening to music on there.
Yeah, it's a handy service, but less than 10% of their traffic comes from the U.S. And so the site actually, like the MPAA filed a lawsuit, and the site owner actually responded as like, look, here's our traffic logs. Less than 10% of our traffic comes from the U.S. You don't have jurisdiction. And the judge agreed with them. Somebody really needs to call Kim.com and let him know.
But the judge didn't talk at all about the copyright aspect of it.
Yeah.
It was purely jurisdiction. It was just like, listen, you got no. But while on this topic, hey, pro tip for those of you who are constantly complaining about the podcast being broken, flvto.biz and 2conv.com. Now I wouldn't click. I'd really inspect those download buttons and cookies when I went there, but possible solution.
Now, ironically, the reason that the podcast is broken is because YouTube DL automation has stopped working because that's what we were using.
Because of these companies.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an arms race. Like sometimes it'll just cut off like halfway and then it's a mess.
They've also been having issues. I know our patrons have complained about this. So the 360p thing,
Yeah.
we have no control over that either. That's also on YouTube's end.
Oh, that's why we're doing 1080p 60 this week, just to see how that goes.
So let us know if
Hope
you're
you're
still
enjoying-
locked at 360.
Yeah, and I hope you're enjoying the 60 FPS goodness. Jazz hands.
Even if you don't get to look at our beautiful features and that crisp, high resolution.
You can't see my individual beard hairs anymore.
Well, we've been talking about the supposed Iranian DNS hacks, and here we are. The government is back, although they probably aren't back today. They'll probably be tomorrow, I guess. And now they're ready to get back into action, so they've issued a warning.
DHS issues a security alert about recent DNS hijacking attacks. DHS lays out a 4-step action plan for investigating DNS hacks and securing DNS management accounts. So this was, like you said, Iran was blamed for this, but it was a man-in-the-middle attack that was done really well against certain sites just for credential collection. So you might want to change your passwords if you're on one of the affected sites, which the DHS has included in that alert, but I don't remember what they are.
And supposedly, at the government level, they're going to change all the passwords and two-factor everything. We'll see. See how that goes. Well, this is truly tragic news, and it's being sold to us under the guise of security, but this seems like the opposite of security.
Google, what are you doing? Wow, the Register's headline is, "Wow, fancy that. Web ad giant Google to block ad blockers in Chrome. For safety, apparently. How many ad blocks could an ad slinger block if an ad slinger could block blocks?"
Firefox Master Race.
Well,
Best dev tools.
that is where people are going to have to go. Now, we use AdBlock Plus on this browser, as many of you constantly remind
Beg
us
for.
of. Jesus. And it's sort of hey, we're not looking to go full DEFCON 3 on ads on this browser.
If you work on the browser team at Google, just go to our one tabs, hit restore, wait 30 seconds, and then try to use that browser.
Yeah.
So we did that out of just self-preservation.
Yeah.
But yeah, uBlock Origin is maybe the gold standard, and that's what's going to be heavily affected here because it filters on such a low level. And Google says anything running Chromium, sorry, not going to let you do that anymore. It's going to be a great year for Firefox.
Great year. Maybe even Edge. Maybe Edge will finally edge up in the competition.
Well, we'll talk about Edge and their new browser thing a little bit later in the news. But while we're talking about Google, let's talk about the new version of Android and a great new feature that it's going to have.
Android Q will include more ways for carriers to SIM lock your phone. Just because Android Q includes better support for multi-SIM cards, but I can't find a legit consumer-friendly reason for this to exist.
I think it's not a consumer-friendly reason. It's a Google's bottom line friendly reason.
I don't even understand how this affects Google's bottom line.
Well,
why would they do this?
because carriers will be more likely to use their phones because they can lock them and put all their bloatware on them.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's not hard to figure out.
I learned in Iceland that it's illegal to do that. Well, you can't install an app that is uninstallable, that is not uninstallable. That's illegal. We need that law.
yeah.
That's cool.
It's like the newsletter law here where you have to have an unsubscribe button at the bottom. That should be
Yeah, because they
implemented for apps.
what was it, Facebook? You can't uninstall now on one of those services. It's like the worst data tracking thing in the universe. Well, as we're speaking of Russia, we should put these stories together. I didn't even notice that.
Russia.
A lot of people have sort of, when it comes to WikiLeaks, they've criticized Assange because he tends to ignore Russia's leaks. But now there's a new game in town, a new WikiLeaks, as it were. It's, what was it? Denial of service?
Denial of it's DDoS, but denial of secrets.
Denial of secrets, yeah. What a great name.
This time it's Russia's emails that are getting leaked from the denial of secrets people. So the Russian oligarchs in the Kremlin, apparatchiks, spared by WikiLeaks in the past will not be so lucky this week. So there's a lot of stuff that's supposed to come out of this email. A lot of really exciting stuff in terms of like some of this Machiavellian chess game that's being played on the world stage.
But it seems like a lot of it is older stuff that it's just the Russians have been really good about hiding.
Yeah.
And some people have gotten a hold of it, and now there's going to be this giant trove of it if you would like to go peruse it, much like WikiLeaks.
Well, there was a lot of stuff in the cable leaks, like just the international cables. That was like, this seems like an international, incident. And some news organizations actually did ask some journalists in the U.S. about the Russian cable leaks, and they said basically Russia gonna Russia. So,
well, we looked over a lot of stuff from our government there.
Yeah.
Too. Like there was the one about. It was Hillary.
Yeah.
And she was talking about Mubarak in Egypt.
Yeah.
And it was like,
And that became an international incident.
He wants to get off of this international standard of finance and like not use our banks. We're going to have to overthrow him.
And that's like the cables. And the cables are not considered secret. So, I mean, what does that tell you?
Well, if you're in China... And let's say that you have managed to not get crippling debt and be excommunicated because you're running some Bitcoin mining rigs and you're barely staying afloat. Terrible news.
New ransomware strain is locking up Bitcoin mining rigs in China. Scroll down. The screenshot for this is amazing. It's like you need to pay up.
Oh,
you got to pay 10 Bitcoin.
Well, who's this guy?
What's going on?
This thing.
It's it's like it's going to overheat your ant miner or whatever if you don't pay.
So there's the warning. H-ant or HANT. I don't know how you pronounce that.
I can't do that.
But the threat is, this is bad firmware, by the way. So they don't really know how people are getting affected. They assume that somebody was giving out a bad version of the firmware that already had a dormant version of this on it. But the threat is, I'm going to turn off the fans and disable the thermal shutdown and max this thing out. And either destroy it or burn your house down. Now you can send 10 Bitcoins, which was like
seems like a lot, $30,000,
$30,000 right now.
Yeah.
Or you can infect how many was it? 1,000 more miners,
yeah.
And that'll also clear your debt. You download a specific version of the firmware with your ID in it, and then you infect other people with that in order to clear your own name.
Nice.
That's a dark timeline right there, because some people will do that.
No one likes a snitch, but China apparently. I mean,
well, the Chinese love a snitch.
Yeah.
But the
app for that.
The thing about it is they're not sure. So built into these ant miners, you can disable the thermal throttle, but I don't think you can turn the fans off. So this might not be a real threat. So who knows?
It will freak people out, though.
Oh yeah, and while this is happening, one way or the other, it's not mining Bitcoin. It immediately turns that off. So
neat.
And in the ransomware world, it's not just ant miners. It's everybody with a new version of an old favorite.
A lot of new ransomware last week. This new Phobos ransomware exploits weak security to hit targets around the world. This ransomware strain has many similarities with one of the most damaging ransomware families. This is what happens when you have weaponized malware that leaks to the internet in general. This is basically anybody with weak security or not running, your full latest patches or anything like that. You download, you run the attachment, and it takes over and encrypts everything.
Ouch. Here's what you'll see if you're infected with this. And I can't remember, what was the name of the other one? It's not Crisis. No, it was something else. Dharma.
Oh,
so
yeah.
this is just a little bit different version of Dharma, improved in various ways. So they didn't even bother to change the splash screen, except they added a little Phobos logo at the very top. And in the leak world, it's not just the Russian oligarchs. It is the gamblers, or casinos, I guess, not the gamblers themselves.
Since this is illegal now, this online casino group has leaked information on 108 million bets, including user details. So the server is now down, but it's unclear if the cloud provider took it down or if the parent company knows that it leaked user details in the first place.
Although leak is a misnomer here. This is just another database. Actually, this was a search engine front end on top of a database that was unsecured.
It's more of that open Elasticsearch stuff, I think.
Yeah, so you could look up everything about the gamblers, like what bets they placed, their address, their name, their phone number, the financial information, although they only gave the last four of the credit card. But they did point out, like, if you won hundreds of thousands of dollars, your address is now available to criminals who know that you have hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That seems like possibly a bad thing.
This was also the old, it wasn't us, it was a third party. So I think it was like a third party of a third party.
Yeah.
It was some sort of analyst group.
Yeah.
Left it online.
We just now learned how to use Amazon this week.
Yeah. Oops. And it's, what have I done?
I don't know.
Our next story is
There it
an
goes.
even bigger version of that, except it's not people who are betting on online betting. It's people who are betting on the not collapse of the
Well,
housing
it's
economy.
people who are being held at the gunpoint of usury.
Millions of bank loan and mortgage documents have leaked online. This is bad. This is really, really bad. You should really check. A lot of lending institutions were affected because it wasn't actually into lending institutions. It was a third-party data handler that takes like the paper forms and OCRs them. So like their bucket leaked online, and it's like a half a dozen lending institutions were affected. Millions and millions of users. Their home loan data, social security number, address, property address, a lot of details.
You're going to get so many calls to consolidate your debt if you're on this list.
Well, no, pro criminal tip. You can call them and impersonate the bank. And like most people, it's like, hey, I'm calling from blah, blah, blah lending institution. And, you know, all your account information, they can verify. I mean, those individuals won't know that it's not really the bank. And it's like, I'm going to need you to send payment to this other address because we've sold your loan. And it's like, okay, sounds good. Going to be a lot of that.
I would wait for a letter.
Yeah,
Although they could do that too. I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, if you're a Mac user, which I mean, you know, Krista, you're not necessarily a Mac user, but
No.
you're kind of in spirit.
I mean,
You've got the
I have
iPad.
an iPad. Yeah, I guess.
So I don't think that your iPad would be affected by this, but who knows?
Malvertisers target Mac users with steganographic code stashed in images. So yeah, steganography. Woo.
Pretty brilliant. So they got a picture right here. This little white strip is the image, and here is what that will actually translate to on a Mac. So now, of course, you still have to be a little bit naive to get caught by this, because that's only going to take you to that web page, and then you must go ahead and click and download some things from that web page. But you went to a trusted quote-unquote website that just served you this ad. This little bit of JavaScript took you somewhere else. So
Yay, Mac users.
the Nest camera. Now, a lot of people, I bought my new house, and I was alarmed by the number of people who were like, hey, when are you going to install your Ring or your Nest or whatever? And I'm
Not
like,
going to.
bro, do you even watch the Level 1 news? Because
Do you know who I am?
The Washington Post has this amazing article. It says, family hack says hacked Nest camera warned them of a North Korean missile attack. This is in California, and they say that they're reeling after a hacker accessed their surveillance camera, falsely warning them of a ballistic missile from North Korea heading toward the United States. So they called 911, and I imagine that this was like a terrible like it's. I mean, we laugh, but it was probably like they had no idea.
well,
What would 911 do? What do you think the dispatcher would do if there was a missile coming?
they see. No, there was the timeline was a little different. They turned on the TV expecting to see every news station on high alert.
Yeah.
But it was just, you know, they were just sitting there talking to the Kardashians, and it's like nothing was going on. And they're like, wait, is no one, how can we be the first to find out about this? We're not even sure where this noise is coming from. So yeah, 911 was like, no, you've been hacked. It turns out that this was just a have I been pwned.
Password.
So it wasn't anything all that special.
Yeah.
It's just,
They chose a poor password for their Nest.
they found where the Nest, the IP address for the Nest, and somehow associated it, looked up the password, and got in.
Exciting times.
Exciting if you're a Nest hacker.
It's another data point in the normies are not ready for Internet of Things.
It's a real niche hacking. Like, I only hack nests.
Well, not really, because you can watch people. I mean,
Yes.
that's entertainment, I suppose. They did talk about another one where a guy, like they turned the light on, like they heard like typing, and they were like, "What is going on?" They turned the light on. And it was like, "Turn the light off." Now, this next story, I felt really good for humanity when I saw the headline, and I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." And in my mind, it was like Girl Scouts, you know, like war driving while they're selling cookies and, you know, like hacking in for the environment. But this is actually something far less impressive.
These Girl Scouts are earning patches for their cybersecurity skills from HP Enterprise. What could possibly,
Yeah, look at
HP.
these patches that with the Hewlett Packard logo at the top. This is basically just a little corporate feel-good nonsense.
Yeah.
They're not learning anything. They're playing a stupid little video game.
So Girl Scouts is young girls, but like, and it's mostly outside stuff, right? Like, what would this have to do with-
there's no. You play this little mobile game, and it gives you these like one or binary choices here, and then you got like it's stupid. It gives you the very basic, most simple. Don't give away your password.
Well, I mean, that makes sense for the age group. I mean, Girl Scouts are like...
Well, no. See, if you had like a group of Girl Scouts that were walking through a neighborhood and they had their little apps and scanners and stuff out, and it's like, gosh, we got to let Mrs. Smith know that she's using like WPA1 and have a weak password. That's a public service. That would be amazing.
You lock your little Girl Scouts in a room with one SSH terminal, and they have to hack their way out of that room.
You realize like Girl Scouts are like 6 and 7 years old up to like 13, right?
You got to make these badges worth something.
Yeah.
I think the badges are it's almost like loot boxes, but for little girls.
Basically.
They used to teach you stuff like fire building and things like that. I don't know if they still do that.
If I had a little girl and she came home with a Hewlett Packard branded, I'd rip it right off.
It's like, no, we're going to do this for real.
You'll make your own patch.
So listen, you come back to me when you've stolen 3 Bitcoins, and I'll make you a patch.
It's going to be the digital version of the Deer Hunter.
How would the Russian roulette work? And
you might accidentally lose your private keys.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I can't wait for some of the story. I can't wait for the. I don't remember if you put it in nonsense or the other thing, but I can't wait for the last story that really is like the Zuck turned deer hunter, like goat hunter. It's just I can't wait for that.
That's the best story this week.
He didn't actually have to track anything.
Yeah,
there was no hunt there. I would love to see him on a hunt.
Well, we'll leave that as a teaser for next time.
That will be in social media, so that could be tomorrow. I don't know. Depends.
How the stories break down.
Business and social media sounds like a pretty good mix for tomorrow, so look forward to that.